They did not tie her hands. They did not blindfold her. They did not rush. She was laid flat on a stone floor, arms stretched out, legs bound loosely, her body already weakening from confinement. Beneath her spine, the executioners placed a jagged rock, purposefully uneven, chosen not for efficiency, but for pain. Then came the door. A solid wooden slab was lowered onto her chest and abdomen, covering her like a coffin lid that hadn't yet closed. It pinned her lungs before the real weight ever arrived. Her breath shortened instantly. Each inhale became work. Then the stones began to fall, one by one. Not dropped, placed. Blocks of stone, iron weights, rough slabs scavenged from the prison yard, the kind of weight used to anchor buildings to the earth. They stacked them slowly, carefully, listening as the wood creaked and bowed under the pressure. Her rib cage began to compress inward, her spine pressed downward, grinding against the rock beneath her back. Every additional pound turned breathing into a negotiation with gravity. This was not execution. This was waiting. They left her there. Hours became days. She was denied food, denied water, denied mercy. When her ribs cracked, no one stopped. When her lungs began to collapse, no one intervened. The stones stayed where they were. This was England. This was the late 1500s, and this was legal. Her crime was silence. Her punishment was wait. This is the story of St. Margaret Clitherow, and of a death designed not to kill quickly, but to crush faith, defiance, and the human body itself, slowly enough for everyone to watch.
To understand why this happened, you first have to understand fear. Not personal fear, but institutional fear. The kind that grips governments. The kind that makes belief dangerous. 16th century England was a nation ruptured by religion. After Henry VIII severed ties with the Catholic Church, belief itself became political currency. What you prayed to, where you worshipped, who you refused to renounce, all of it became evidence. Under Elizabeth I, Catholicism was no longer merely unfashionable, it was criminalized. Catholics were seen as traitors in waiting, potential collaborators with foreign powers, suspected enemies of the crown hiding in plain sight. Attending Mass could get you fined, imprisoned, or worse. Harboring a priest was capital treason. And Margaret Clitherow did exactly that. She was not noble. She was not powerful. She was a butcher's wife in the city of York, a mother, a shopkeeper, and a devout Catholic convert in a time when conversion itself was an act of rebellion. Her home became a refuge. Priests were hidden in secret compartments. Mass was whispered behind locked doors. Networks of belief survived not in cathedrals, but in kitchens, basements, and ordinary households like hers. To the crown, that made her dangerous. When she was finally arrested in 1586, the intent was not immediately to kill her. The goal was information, names, networks, locations. They wanted her to speak. But Margaret refused to enter a plea. This was not stubbornness, it was strategy. Under English law, anyone who pled not guilty could face trial. A trial meant witnesses, a jury, records. In those records could condemn her children, her neighbors, and anyone who had ever entered her home. By remaining silent, she denied the court its machinery. That silence created a problem. The law had no verdict for someone who would not plead, and so it turned to an older solution, one carried over from medieval jurisprudence. Peine forte et dure, strong and hard punishment, a method not designed as an execution, but as coercion. A legal limbo where the accused was slowly crushed under increasing weight until either they submitted or died. If they spoke, the process stopped. If they stayed silent, the law claimed innocence while still allowing death to occur. It was a violence disguised as choice. Margaret was given one last chance. She was told that if she pleaded, the trial would proceed, that she could live. She refused. In that moment, her silence became a threat to the state, and the state responded the only way it knew: with weight, with ritual, with law-backed cruelty slow enough to break the strongest resolve. Because this was never about justice. It was about control, about forcing belief into the open, or crushing it where it stood. If you believe history's darkest secrets should be remembered, not buried, subscribe to the Crimson Archive.
They called it peine forte et dure, strong pain, hard punishment. It was not designed to draw blood quickly. It was designed to let gravity do the work. The chamber was usually bare, a stone or earthen floor, cold, slightly damp, sometimes a public room, sometimes a prison cell. No spectacle was required. The method itself was spectacle enough. The victim was ordered to lie flat on their back, arms extended, legs straight. The posture already unnatural, already humiliating. Beneath their spine, jailers placed a single object, a sharp, uneven stone. Not large, not dramatic, just enough to ensure the body could not settle evenly under pressure. Then came the door. Not a symbol, not ceremonial. An actual wooden door removed from its hinges. Thick oak, heavy with iron nails and age. It was lowered onto the victim's chest and abdomen, edge to edge, covering the torso like a lid. At first, the weight was tolerable. Then, stones were added, one by one. Not thrown, placed. 40 pounds, 80, 100. The physics was simple, merciless. Each added stone distributed force downward, compressing the ribcage against the lungs against the spine against stone. Breathing became mechanical, shallow, controlled. Each inhale a negotiation, each exhale a decision about wasting air. When the weight crossed a threshold, usually around 300 to 400 pounds, the ribs began to deform. Not snap, bend, flex inward like ribs on a collapsing cage. The lungs could no longer expand fully. Air trapped inside became poison. At higher weights, something else happened. Bone failed. Ribs cracked under compressive stress, not impact. They broke inward, splintering. Jagged ends pierced lung tissue. Blood filled the chest cavity slowly, not enough to cause immediate death, enough to cause drowning inside the body. The stone beneath the back served its own purpose. It focused force into a single point along the spine. Vertebrae compressed, discs ruptured, nerves screamed and went dark. Paralysis often came before unconsciousness. And still, the punishment continued. Food was withheld, water denied. The body began eating itself to survive the compression.
Muscles weakened, organs sagged. The diaphragm trapped under the door fatigued until even shallow breaths failed. Death, when it came, was often mislabeled as sudden. It was anything but. Some victims endured 2 days, some 3, a few longer. The executioner's role was not to kill, only to add weight and weight.
Margaret Clitherow was 40 years old, a butcher's wife, a mother of 3, pregnant with her 4th. She did not look like a criminal. That was the problem. In Elizabethan England, to be Catholic was not merely a faith choice, it was a political threat. Mass was illegal, priests were traitors. Harboring one meant death. Margaret hid them anyway. She turned her home into a sanctuary, false walls, secret cupboards, quiet signals. Her children learned early when not to speak, when to listen, when to pretend nothing was happening at all. She knew the risks. When she was arrested, she refused one thing: to plead. Under English law, refusing to plead blocked the trial. No plea meant no verdict. No verdict meant no confiscation of property. Her children would not be left destitute. So she said nothing. The sentence followed automatically, pressing. On March 25, 1586, Margaret was taken to the toll booth on Ouse Bridge in York, a place of commerce, of passage, of ordinary life, now a death chamber. They stripped her to a shift. She was laid on the floor. The stone was placed beneath her spine. Witnesses would later say she prayed aloud, not loudly, not theatrically, quietly, for her children, for strength, for the men placing the weights on her body. The door came down. At first, silence. Then, the stones followed. Margaret refused to scream. As the weight climbed, her breath shortened. Her ribs compressed so tightly that her chest barely moved. Her face flushed, then darkened as oxygen failed. At roughly 700 pounds, the final stones were placed. Accounts vary on how long she lived under the weight. Some say 15 minutes, others longer. What is consistent is what happened next. When the door was lifted, her body did not rise. Her ribs had collapsed inward so completely that her torso appeared flattened. Blood and froth leaked from her mouth and nose. One witness reported that the unborn child was forced from her body by the pressure. Whether that detail is literal or symbolic, the meaning remains. The punishment did not merely kill her, it erased her shape. Margaret Clitherow never spoke a word in her defense. Her silence was her final act of resistance.
Peine forte et dure was eventually abolished, not because it was cruel, but because it was inconvenient. By the 18th century, legal systems preferred efficiency. Guilty pleas could be compelled, property seizure mechanisms refined. Silence was no longer a loophole. Yet, the logic behind the punishment never truly vanished. Pressure still exists. When institutions cannot force belief through argument, they apply weight. Legal, social, economic, psychological. Slow enough to appear civilized, heavy enough to crush dissent. Margaret Clitherow was canonized centuries later, her death reframed as martyrdom. But sanctification risks smoothing the brutality, turning real agony into symbolic triumph. We should resist that comfort. She was not a symbol when she lay on the floor. She was a body under 700 pounds of stone, a woman gasping for air, a mother choosing silence to save her children. The mechanism mattered. The suffering mattered. Because history does not repeat through identical tools. It repeats through familiar logic. The logic that says pressure is persuasion, that silence deserves punishment,
that law, when threatened, reveals its teeth. So, ask yourself, when truth becomes dangerous, when belief becomes resistance, how much weight does the world apply before the body breaks? And if you believe stories like these should never be softened, simplified, or forgotten, subscribe now. The next investigation is waiting.